All right, so listeners, today we're going to be doing something a little different.
Oh.
Yeah, we're going to be taking a look at a Western.
A Western, okay.
But this is not your typical shoot-'em-up cowboy flick.
All right, I'm intrigued.
This is Old Henry, and from the reviews and articles I've been reading, this one really gets under your skin.
Interesting. What is it about Old Henry that makes it stand out from, all the other Westerns out there?
Well, it's got all the classic elements,
Okay.
Like it's set in 1906 Oklahoma territory.
Right, so we've got the setting.
Yeah, you've got the wide open spaces, the lone homesteader, but it's more about the internal struggles of the characters.
So less about the action and more about what's going on in their heads.
Exactly. It's a slow burn, which isn't what you typically expect from a Western.
You got that right.
Now, the story centers around this guy, Henry McCarty, and he's played by Tim Blake Nelson.
Oh, I like him. He's a great actor.
Oh, he's fantastic in this, and all the reviews keep talking about his quiet intensity.
Quiet intensity, huh? That's interesting.
Yeah, it makes you wonder, what's he hiding? What's going on behind those eyes?
Yeah, just that description alone, makes me think about the weight of history.
Oh, yeah.
Every wrinkle on his face is telling a story, as even before we get to the actual plot.
Right. So imagine this is Henry's living his quiet life on this homestead when all of a sudden this wounded stranger shows up.
Uh-oh. That's never good.
And the stranger's name is Curry, and he's carrying a satchel full of cash.
Oh, so right away we got questions.
Yeah. Who is this guy? Where'd the money come from? And what kind of troubles is he going to bring to Henry's doorstep?
See, that's classic Western trope right there.
Yeah.
The arrival of a stranger who disrupts the fragile peace and forces our hero to make these tough choices.
Yeah, it's like that briefcase full of cash in No Country for Old Men.
Exactly. You just know things are going to get messy.
And things do escalate because a posse shows up led by this guy named Ketchum.
Okay.
And they claim to be lawmen looking for Curry, but...
But are they really who they say they are?
Yeah, can Henry trust them?
That whole who to trust dilemma, that's so universal.
It is, isn't it?
It's not just a Western thing,
Right.
Have you ever been in a situation where you're just trying to figure out someone's true intentions?
Oh, all the time.
Yeah, trying to read between the lines, seeing if you're being played.
Exactly.
Well, that's what Henry's going through, but with life or death stakes.
And it puts us, the audience, right there in the middle of it.
Oh, absolutely.
We're trying to figure out, alongside Henry, who's telling the truth.
Right.
But there's another layer to all of this. Henry's son, Wyatt.
Oh, right. I forgot about him.
Now imagine being a young guy in that situation.
Oh, gosh, yeah.
You're trying to protect your father, but you're also trying to figure out what's right.
Yeah, the reviewers are calling their relationship the emotional backbone of the film.
Interesting.
So it's not just about this external conflict with the posse and this mysterious Curry.
Right.
But also the internal struggle within this family.
Yeah, and I think this is where the filmmakers got really clever. Instead of constant action, they went with this slow burn approach. The tension just builds gradually, and it all leads up to this shocker of a climax.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, the reviews are saying it's not an action-packed thrill ride,
Right.
But more like a psychological thriller set in the Wild West.
That's fascinating because it makes you wonder how they create that suspense.
Yeah.
Yeah. Are they using long silences, dramatic close-ups, ominous music?
Probably all of the above.
I bet they're using the landscape itself.
Oh, for sure. Those vast open spaces can be just as unsettling as, a dark alley in a film noir.
Absolutely. That sense of isolation, being surrounded by nothing but emptiness, it can really amplify that feeling of dread.
Yeah, it's like the landscape itself becomes a character.
Exactly.
Speaking of things that are unsettling, there's this big reveal about Henry's past.
Ooh, a mysterious past.
And from what I'm reading, it's a game changer.
All right, so what can you tell us without giving anything away?
Well, the reviewers call it a gripping tale of identity, survival, and redemption, but they're pretty tight-lipped about the specifics.
That makes me think about the power of secrets, especially in a place like the Wild West.
Oh, totally.
People came from all over, often running from something or someone.
Right.
Reinventing themselves was a way of life.
What if Henry isn't who he says he is?
Ooh.
What if his past is catching up with him?
In the worst way possible.
Exactly. And how's that going to affect his son, Wyatt?
And if we think about those themes of identity and redemption you mentioned earlier,
Yeah.
What do those even mean in a setting like the Wild West?
Yeah.
Is redemption even possible when you're constantly surrounded by violence and lawlessness?
That's a great question.
Can you really escape your past when the world is so unforgiving?
It's like he's caught between who he was and who he wants to be, and now this whole situation with Curry and the posse.
Right.
It's forcing him to confront all those demons he's been running from.
Man, this is getting good.
I know, right? But before we dive into the deeper implications of Henry's past and how it all plays out, let's take a closer look at the film's artistic merit.
Okay, let's do it. One thing that really jumps out at me from these reviews is the film's atmosphere.
Yeah, they talk about how the director, Potsy Ponciroli, really created this, sense of place and tension.
Absolutely. Like they talk about his restrained direction, how he uses long takes and subtle framing to build suspense.
It's not your typical, in-your-face kind of stuff.
Right. It's not about bombarding you with flashy editing or special effects.
Yeah, it's almost like those old Sergio Leone westerns,
Oh, yeah, I see what you mean.
where the silence just speaks volumes and the anticipation is so thick you could cut it with a knife.
That's a great comparison. And speaking of Leone, the cinematography in Old Henry is just as crucial in creating that atmosphere.
Oh, I bet.
They mention these sweeping landscapes juxtaposed against the, claustrophobic interiors of Henry's home.
Oh, wow. That's got to be effective.
Yeah, it's a visual language that speaks to both the beauty and danger of the frontier.
That contrast, it's like you can feel the weight of the world closing in on Henry, even as he's surrounded by these wide open spaces.
Yeah, and think about the color palette they're using.
Oh, yeah.
Earthy tones, natural lighting.
Yeah.
It's not romanticized at all.
Right.
It's gritty and real.
Yeah, it's like you're practically breathing in the dust and leather of the Oklahoma Territory just by watching the film.
You can practically smell the sweat and the gunpowder.
Exactly. And when the violence does erupt, it's brutal and impactful.
Oh, I bet.
The reviewers are saying that it's not stylized or gratuitous,
Okay.
It's raw and visceral.
Which makes it all the more unsettling.
Yeah, for sure. It's a reminder that in the Wild West, actions had consequences.
Absolutely.
There wasn't always a clear line between good and bad, hero and villain.
Right.
You did what you had to do to survive.
And sometimes that meant getting your hands dirty.
Yeah, and that's something that a lot of modern Westerns gloss over.
They do.
They focus on the romanticized aspects of the genre, the gunfights, the showdowns.
Right.
But Old Henry seems to be digging deeper, exploring the moral gray areas of that world.
It makes you think about how our perceptions of heroism have changed over time.
It does, doesn't it?
Is Henry a hero? Is he a villain? Or is he something in between?
That's the beauty of a well-told story, right?
It is.
It forces us to confront our own preconceived notions and to question those easy answers.
Okay, so we've talked about the atmosphere, the pacing, the violence.
Yeah.
But let's go back to those core themes of identity and redemption.
Okay.
The reviewers are saying that Henry's struggle to reconcile his past with his present is something we can all relate to.
What do you think they mean by that?
Well, who hasn't made choices they regret?
Oh, yeah.
Who hasn't tried to bury their past and start over?
Everyone's got skeletons in their closet.
Right. And in a place like the Wild West, where people were constantly reinventing themselves,
Yeah.
those themes become even more potent.
Right? Like, what if we found out that our parents weren't who we thought they were?
Oh, gosh, yeah.
What if they were hiding a dark secret that completely changed our understanding of them?
That could rock anyone's world.
Totally. Not just in the Wild West.
And the fact that Henry's relationship with his son is so central to the film, it adds another layer to that.
Yeah.
It's not just about personal redemption.
Right.
It's about the legacy we leave behind, the impact our actions have on those we love.
Yeah, that review called their relationship the emotional backbone of the film.
It did.
And I think that's spot on. It's the heart of the story, even amidst all the, tension and suspense.
It makes you think about the difficult conversations we have to have with our loved ones, the truths we have to face, the forgiveness we have to find, both for ourselves and for others.
This film is sounding pretty heavy.
Yeah, a little bit.
But I'm guessing there's some humor in there too, right?
I didn't come across any mentions of outright comedy in the reviews.
Okay.
But that doesn't mean it's not there.
Right.
Sometimes the best humor comes from the characters themselves,
Oh, for sure.
for the way they interact with each other, and with the absurd situations they find themselves in.
Think about Clint Eastwood in The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly.
Oh, yeah.
He didn't crack jokes, but his dry delivery and his sly smile were hilarious.
Exactly. And sometimes that understated humor is even more effective than a laugh-out-loud gag.
Yeah.
It creates a sense of irony,
Yeah.
a way of coping with the harsh realities of the world.
So even though Old Henry might not be a laugh-a-minute comedy,
Right.
It sounds like there's still a chance for some witty dialogue and some moments of character-driven humor.
Absolutely. And that's part of what makes this film so intriguing.
Yeah.
It's taking those familiar Western tropes and subverting them.
Right.
Adding layers of complexity and nuance that you wouldn't expect.
Okay, so we've talked about the good stuff.
The atmosphere, the acting, the themes.
Yeah, but the reviews also mention some potential criticism.
Oh, yeah. Let's be fair and address those, too.
Yeah. One thing they point out is that the slow pacing and minimalist approach might not be for everyone.
Yeah, if you're looking for a high-octane action flick.
Yeah, this isn't it.
This isn't it.
Some people might find it a little too slow.
Too talky.
Too talky. But, for those of us who appreciate a film that takes its time to build suspense and explore character,
Yeah.
it sounds like a real treat.
It's like a slow-cooked stew versus a fast food burger.
I like that.
Both can be satisfying, but they offer different experiences.
Exactly. And the reviews also mentioned that some of the supporting characters feel a bit underdeveloped.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they serve more as plot devices than fully fleshed out individuals.
That's a fair point. But with a film like this where the focus is so tightly on Henry and Wyatt's relationship,
Yeah.
it's understandable that the supporting characters might get less screen time.
It's like a stage play, right?
Yeah.
You have your main characters and then a few supporting roles that help move the plot along. But the real drama comes from that central conflict and the emotional journeys of those main characters.
That's a great way to put it. And in this case, it sounds like Tim Blake Nelson's performance as Henry is so powerful
Oh, yeah.
that it compensates for any shortcomings in the supporting cast.
They were raving about his performance,
Oh.
calling it unforgettable, a career-defining role.
Wow.
It seems like he really embodies that character,
Yeah.
bringing that quiet intensity to life in a way that's both compelling and unsettling.
And that brings us back to the film's overall impact.
Okay.
Despite the potential criticisms, the reviewers seem to agree that Old Henry is a masterful slow-burn Western
It is.
that offers a fresh perspective on the genre.
Yeah, they praised the atmospheric direction, the outstanding performances,
Yeah.
and the thought-provoking storytelling. They even called it a poignant and rewarding entry in the Western genre, suggesting that it stays with you long after the credits roll.
It sounds like a film that respects its audience,
Oh.
trusting them to engage with the material and draw their own conclusions.
Yeah.
It's not trying to spoon-feed you a message or tell you what to think.
And that's something I really appreciate in a film.
Me too.
I like to be challenged,
Yeah.
to be left with questions that linger in my mind long after the lights come up.
Absolutely. And it seems like Old Henry offers plenty of those thought-provoking moments.
It does.
It's a film that invites multiple viewings each time, revealing new layers of meaning and nuance.
Now, we've covered a lot of ground here,
We have.
but there's one final point from the reviews that I think deserves our attention.
Okay, what's that?
They hint at the film's exploration of the morality of violence in a lawless world.
Ah, yes.
Yeah.
That age-old question.
Yeah.
Does a harsh environment justify harsh actions?
Is violence ever truly the answer, or does it simply perpetuate a cycle of pain and suffering?
It's a heavy topic,
Huh.
but one that's woven into the very fabric of the Western genre.
It is.
And it sounds like Old Henry doesn't shy away from exploring those moral complexities.
And that's something that resonates with us even today.
Oh, absolutely.
We're constantly bombarded with images of violence,
Yeah.
both in the real world and in the media.
Everywhere we look.
It makes you question how far we've really come since the days of the Wild West.
Right. Are we still living in a world where violence is seen as the only solution to our problems?
Or are there other ways to resolve conflict?
To find justice?
To break the cycle?
These are questions that Old Henry seems to be grappling with.
Yeah.
And it's a conversation worth having.
Yeah, it really makes you think, were those times really so different from our own?
Right, like maybe the settings changed, but
Yeah.
those fundamental questions about right and wrong survival, the consequences of our choices, those are still relevant.
Oh, absolutely. And it's interesting how the film uses this Western genre to explore those universal themes.
Yeah, it's like taking something familiar and turning it on its head,
Right.
making us look at it from a whole new perspective.
We think we know what a Western is all about, right?
Right, gunfights, horses, saloons.
Exactly. But Old Henry challenges all those expectations.
It's not just homage to those classic Westerns.
No.
It's a deconstruction of the genre.
Yeah.
It's asking us to think about what those classic stories really tell us about ourselves, about the choices we make when we're faced with these impossible odds.
And that's what makes it so compelling, right?
It is.
It's not just entertainment, it's a conversation starter.
Exactly.
It's a film that invites us to question our own values.
Our own beliefs.
About what it means to be a good person.
A hero, even a survivor.
And, I'm struck by the fact that this film is getting so much critical acclaim.
Yeah, it's not just genre fans who are responding to it.
Right, it's crossing over into the mainstream and generating a lot of buzz.
So what do you think it is about Old Henry that's resonating with such a wide audience?
Well, for one thing, it's a beautifully made film.
It is.
I mean, the cinematography, the acting, the pacing, it all works together to create this truly immersive experience.
But I think it's more than that.
Okay.
I think there's a depth to this film, a rawness that speaks to something deeper within us.
Yeah, you're right. It's not shying away from those hard truths about life, about the choices we make and the consequences that we have to live with. And I think that honesty, it's something that audiences are craving, especially in a world where so much entertainment feels superficial and escapist.
Yeah, it's like that saying, the truth will set you free.
Right.
Maybe not literally free.
Yeah.
But emotionally free.
Emotionally free, yeah.
Old Henry seems to be tapping into that desire for authenticity, for stories that grapple with real issues and don't offer those easy answers.
And it doesn't hurt that Tim Blake Nelson gives this phenomenal performance as Henry.
She's so good.
The critics are calling him unforgettable.
Yeah.
And I can see why he brings such a quiet strength and complexity to the role.
Yeah, you can feel the weight of his past.
Oh, yeah.
And every gesture.
It's like he's carrying the whole world on his shoulders. But he still manages to convey this sense of resilience.
Of hope.
And that's something that resonates with all of us, isn't it?
Yeah.
That ability to keep going, to find a reason to fight, even when everything seems lost.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here.
We have.
We've delved into those reviews. We've analyzed the themes.
We talked about the artistic merit.
But for those of you listening who haven't seen Old Henry yet,
right,
what's the one thing you should take away from this deep dive?
The big takeaway.
The big so what?
So what is that this film will stay with you.
Okay.
It's not a mindless action flick you'll forget 5 minutes after you've seen it.
Right.
It's a film that'll make you think, make you feel, and maybe even make you question some of your own deeply held beliefs.
It's a Western that transcends the genre.
Absolutely.
It's a story about identity redemption and the choices we make when the stakes are high.
It's a film that reminds us that even in the darkest of times,
yeah,
even in the most unforgiving environments, there's always the possibility for hope, for change, for something better.
And most importantly, it's a reminder that great storytelling,
yes,
it can transport us to another time and place.
Yeah.
But it can also hold up a mirror to our own lives and make us confront those truths we might otherwise try to ignore.
So if you're looking for a film that will challenge you, move you, and stay with you long after the credits roll,
then Old Henry is definitely worth your time.
Absolutely. And who knows? It might even spark some interesting conversations with your friends and family.
Oh, I bet.
About the things that really matter.
Yeah, those deep conversations.
And sometimes a good conversation is all we need to remind us that, you know, we're not alone in this crazy world. We're all just trying to find our way to make sense of things and to tell our own stories.
Well said. And on that note, we'll wrap up our deep dive into Old Henry.
Until next time.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep those conversations going.